All right. And we have a couple of folks online. So Kellen, if you could introduce yourself.
Hello, my Logitech camera I've been using for the last 16 or so years is finally given up on me, so I am not able to go on camera right now. My name's Kellen. I'm a co-founder and partner at Ravada Consulting. We do REAP grants, that's Rural Energy for America program, helping small businesses and agricultural producers get 50% of their solar projects covered by federal grant money. We also do non-REAP grant writing. We're currently involved with New Boco on a couple different projects, one of which is an NSF Engines grant involving Collins Aerospace and some other folks trying to get some grant money for semiconductor and aerospace defense technology work up in Cedar Rapids area. We do a lot of other things too, work with municipalities around building out water infrastructure. There's a lot of that going on right now in small towns around the country. And then our third part of business is ad hoc data analytics. So we can help people with market mix models, spinning up data infrastructure that doesn't already exist. We also love doing surveys. That kind of falls into that category too. So we do some market research. Most prominently for all of you in the room is the food web, Southeast Iowa food web involving the 10 counties down here. We're working on the needs assessment around that involving a big survey. So yeah, Ravada Consulting.
Thank you, Kellen. Next we've got Kay. Kay Mitchner, you want to introduce yourself?
Kay Mitchner, I remember.
All right. Tammy, could you introduce yourself? You're all on mute. Well, we're going to skip the Kay and Tammy and move on into the presentation. So we have Corey Morrows here, who is piping in from Mexico City. So we can honestly say that Traction Thursday is now an international program, which is really kind of cool. Let's give Corey a warm Traction Thursday welcome.
Wonderful. It's great to be here with you all. Bob asked if I would open with a little bit of my story and my background to give some context as to what led my business partner and I to develop these tools. Sadly, he couldn't be here today. He's working on a project up in Maine, but he's also from Fairfield. Nick Johnson is my co-founder with Farsight Codex. And I have another project that I might touch a little bit on, but mostly I'll be focused on this joint project with Nick Johnson. So since I left Fairfield in 2015, coming on 10 years, I've been living in the Bay Area. I lived in Portland and now I live in Mexico City. I've worked some of you might remember I had a tea shop in Fairfield, Iowa, just a few doors down from Cafe Paradiso. And after that, I worked in the service industry in Michelin star dining as a server and a sommelier. I got a master's degree in organization design at Sonoma State University, and ended up doing some independent consulting that led me to a very pivotal project in my career where I was part of a kind of higher tech, very high budget ag startup in Massachusetts, which was a cannabis startup. And I was brought on initially to do some consulting there, and it led to a full-time role where we had this kind of tailored role for me. It was the chief process officer, where I was overseeing a software development project for a custom enterprise resource planning software for the cannabis industry. And it was sort of the other half of that, the non-software half of that, was this program called the Continuous Innovation Program to be able to justify providing blue-collar workers with more opportunities, both financially and in terms of learning and development, and kind of getting them more involved in the day-to-day problems and giving them greater ownership of the problems of quality control and compliance in a highly regulated business. So that startup experience was very stressful. It was wonderful. It was a great learning opportunity. And during that time, my now partner and I found that we were extremely compatible. So he was the interim CEO at first and then became the full-time CEO of that company. And we learned a lot. We learned a lot about what not to do. And we learned a lot in particular about the perils and kind of road bumps of working with other people's money. So we were basically constantly fundraising during that time. It ended up being over a $60 million project. And the pressures from investors, the pressures from being in a regulated market during COVID, with supply chain delays, with the state not coming to license us in time, there was just a lot in that particular business that could go wrong and did go wrong. And in the end, when my partner and I left, we thought we'd love to take our talents and put them to use in a more holistic context, trying to help startups avoid many of the mistakes that we faced and kind of not be behind the 8 ball, so to speak, for so much of the time that we were. So Nick has a background in finance and diligence for venture capital, and also has a background in automation and agriculture operations. I have a background in organization design, a little bit of a background in human resources, and yeah, I've just kind of been one of those entrepreneurs that finds themselves wearing a lot of hats in a lot of different situations. So the inspiration for all of this, which I'm sure many of you can connect with, is like preventing a near infinite capacity for struggle and strife and suffering that is starting a business, especially starting a business with other people's money. So I'm going to share screen and I don't know, Bob, was there anything else that you wanted me to touch on before I launch into kind of the demo of the project here?
No, that's a great overview. I think people can understand what your background is and why this is significant, and why you created it.
Products that we developed, specifically like low tech. This isn't custom built software. We used existing solutions in the form of Notion, which is a project management software. There's, free users, there's paid users. It's a pretty powerful, flexible piece of software for project management, team management, information management, etc. So we built this launch command center for startups that are looking to attract capital. And this is to help them be ready for funding partners and for capital. There's really 2 parts to this. The first part is the due diligence hub, where we have a comprehensive RFI, or request for information, that based off of over a decade of different RFIs for a wide range of businesses in a wide range of industries, really covers just about everything that a financial partner, whether it's a bank or a investor like a high net worth individual, or a investing institution like a venture capital fund, might want from you. And there's many reasons that it's very valuable to have this all together. I'll go through a few of them, but you can see that we've got everything from organization chart to financial documents to legal documents, and basically everything that you could possibly imagine a funding partner might be interested in getting. Typically, this is managed over a lengthy process of 30, 60, 90 days of due diligence. If a funding partner is interested in you, it can take a while for somebody to kind of come around and email sort of trickle in. Oh, can you send us that? Oh, can you send us that? And if you're working with multiple funding partners, as we had over 100 individual investors or over 120 entities, including individuals and firms invested in Vanguard. And having to manage this individually from case to case ends up being a total nightmare, and doing it through email is a nightmare. Sometimes people will offer data rooms. This is kind of like having a data room ready for that, but Whereas one partner, like a bank, might be more interested in one type of document, a VC may or may not need that type of document. So this is about readiness. What we have here is like some basic project management functionality, where what we first do when we're onboarding a client is we will figure out what is non-applicable for their use case. Okay, these documents are not going to be relevant. It's a startup. There are no tax returns. There are no bank statements. This is all perspective, right? So we figure out what's non-applicable. And then you can use various views here, like a calendar view, to figure out who in the team is responsible for what sort of submissions by what time. And so you can look at your individual to-do list. So what am I responsible for submitting? You update the documents in terms of what's the status? Is this submitted? Is it in review, etc. Here I have it so that only those things that are not submitted remain on my list. And as soon as things have been reviewed, they go, if they're reviewed and they have this tag deal overview, this means this is the type of file that you might want a prospective financial partner to look at. So your investment deck is pretty obvious. You might have some bios of the key leadership, your org chart, some key information, but the value of having this prepared and ready is you shorten the funding time cycle. You also present professionalism and readiness for capital. Most founders, most entrepreneurs seeking capital do not have this level of organization and tidiness of their affairs. So you can make a very positive impression with potential funding partners. And one story, which I just got the numbers clear again, I told Bob the wrong number, it's actually more. We had a situation where we were closing on a piece of real estate for over 20 million. And that was 24 hours out, and one of the key funding partners to the tune of 4.2 million backed out 24 hours before. And they basically said, sorry, we're going in a different direction. If you don't like it, sue us. We have a great legal team. And we needed to close that because the seller of the real estate was potentially going to walk away. There was some tension, and they weren't interested in coming back to the table if these terms weren't met then and there. So we had 24 hours to close 4.2 million in funding. And the way we did that was have everything ready to go. And we had all our ducks in a row, and we didn't have things gated behind non-compete, or sorry, what is it? Non-disclosure agreements. No gating of information. So basically we can take this deal overview pane and just get a link and send that out to anyone. One of the happy accidents of this is if you're not taking a gated approach and you're being more transparent with your information, you can reach the right people faster, and you can also open yourself up to happy accidents where they're sharing that information. So even some people that we weren't soliciting for capital, they ended up sharing it around with their friends. And we did end up closing that 4.2 million. And again, later, another time we closed 3.6 in another round within a 24-hour window based on this principle of transparency and this principle of readiness. So it really speaks a lot to prospective funding partners to have all of this stuff ready. They told us multiple times, this is super helpful, but it goes beyond just these kind of standard documents. What we've done to really make a big impact is, this is the second part of the Launch Command Center called the Refinery, where we have a whole slew of resources for startups that really, this is not meant to be used all at once. This is meant to be used over the period of 2 or 3 years. It's kind of there for you, waiting in the wings. Like when you need it, there's going to be helpful resources to help to guide you in solving complex problems of founding a company. That's from financial challenges to strategy and organization design to HR logistics to team management to compliance and quality control, et cetera. So we have a whole slew of tools here with kind of there's like a link to the document. There's kind of a context setting of why is this useful? When would you use it? When would you not use it? All sorts of tools here, no time to go into all of them, but I'll give you a peek at one of the most sophisticated in technical tools that we have. It's called the Farsight Codex Financial Assessment, where based on very, very limited inputs that every single business should have, whether this is actuals and you're looking at your existing balance sheet and income statement, or whether you're looking at prospective kind of forecasted out financials. You take the information that would be in a balance sheet and income statement, and you get this super robust and yet easy to understand comprehensive financial dashboard where you can see the financial health of the organization projected out over 5 years. So we're looking at 3 methods of valuation for the company, bankruptcy risk, some of the fundamentals up here. This will show information on the capital stack, like what different kinds of debt or equity are represented and at a kind of high level so people can get a glance of that. Industry information, we use the North American industry classification system to get information on like your industry weighted average cost of capital. And we show 16 different performance ratios contextualized with regards to where this quote unquote should be as a measure of like great health. Now, most businesses are not going to have everything like in the blue here, especially over all 5 years. But this will help you see where you're maybe over leveraged, where you're maybe under leveraged. And we don't assume that everybody using this tool, certainly I do not have the financial acumen to really understand what all of these things are. Even many investors don't. But you have it all here at a glance so that the things that are important to any individual are ready, and you don't need to take days or weeks to get a CFO, which you may not even be able to afford, to be able to produce this information for you to hand off to investors. So just based on having this all automated, you have an incredible amount of power at your fingertips to be able to start the right conversations and garner trust and confidence in your financial planning for your business. So any questions just on this tool before I move on?
I have to believe that you have some questions.
Well, yeah, I've gotten the overview from Corey before, and I think I'm really interested to see the detail. Corey, for example, on this financial assessment, would a typical QuickBook kind of data set be all the data you would need if you'd been operating a startup, say, for at least a year? Would that basically have all the input data needed for this chart, or would you have to go beyond that?
Yeah, great question. That should be adequate. The whole purpose of this, and so we also design much more robust bottom-up, operationally integrated systems where you can kind of have all the specifics of your cost of goods and your products and your profit margin and all of that like completely set up so that this is actually fed from things that are much more detailed than say like the information in your QuickBooks account. But even if you're just using QuickBooks, or even if you're not using QuickBooks and you have some basic accounting stuff, then like some spreadsheets, then that should work. We also produced a number of smaller sheets here as well. So like if you're not sure if you have a schedule of assets, this is a tool that helps you keep track of all the assets that you have, classify them according to US tax law, and get a clear sense of like the lifetime depreciation and the current state of the depreciation of your assets. So there's really like, our position is, even if you're not financially sophisticated, you should be able to look financially sophisticated enough, and actually far more financially sophisticated than most people would be. And based on very limited inputs and without having somebody like a very high caliber professional on your full-time payroll, or without wanting to pay a lot of hours to a finance professional to do this information for you manually, you get the benefit of having this available to you basically at any point.
Which leads to a follow-on question. Is this like a software as a service subscription or a one-time fee? How do you get paid?
Yeah, so this is a more complicated answer, but we're still figuring out the business model, because we found that, perhaps unsurprisingly, a lot of founders who are pitching this to, because it's more like, one of the key people in charge for a business is going to be the person to decide to implement this or not. They are so used to operating, walking through fire and just putting out the fire directly one foot ahead of them, that this level, even though the inputs are minimal, this level of foresight and this level of kind of power through information at your fingertips ended up being hard for a lot of people to swallow. So to speak, it's hard to accept the cognitive overhead required to reduce your future cognitive overhead. And we've known entrepreneurs in general to just be constantly flying by the seat of their pants. In this, even though the inputs are very limited, we've found that people are fascinated by this tool. People love it. People are impressed by it, and we have very poor adoption. So we don't have an established business model. We're experimenting with a few things, but we're open right now to experiments. We're open to finding the right way in with the right people and looking at different options for monetization. Right now, it's not looking like, in the short term, it's going to be a monthly sort of cost for the tool. We're not wrapping it up into like a proprietary SaaS product that you pay a monthly subscription for, but over time that's possible.
Well, Corey, when you mentioned this, I said, okay, this is perfect for the model, for the Traction Thursdays model, because part of what we do here is hear the given wisdom of people who have gone through the fire and talk about all of their experiences and what we can learn. Another is people who just have an idea and they come and pitch the idea. Another is a person like you or a company like you that's got a really great product, but may need some additional thought. And since we have a big collective brain here, as I understand from Alex, that's one of the reasons why we do Traction Thursday, is to have people come and say, okay, this is what I got. This is my challenge. So I think that's the point we are at right now, aren't we?
Yes. Yeah. So Corey, I've got a thought for you, and I will make yet another introduction. One place where I could see the financial model working for you if you catch it just right. So looking at ISA Ventures, the venture fund that I worked with through the accelerator, they've got a portfolio of 41 startups. And to your point earlier, Corey, they don't have the mental capacity or the capacity to put all the data into place. But the venture fund needs to make sure that each of those portfolio companies have solid financial models and can account for all of these things. And they struggle. They really do. It takes probably 2 years, 3 years of runway before the founders have the resources in place and or the wherewithal to put together some semblance of financial reports. Where I could see a venture firm such as ISAV deploying your software for their startups to monitor and maintain their financial health. And you could charge a per seat fee. So for every portfolio company that uses the software, you get a grease on. So if I've got 41 companies, you get 41, you have income from 41 companies. The venture firm is responsible then for doling that out. I don't know what your thoughts about that model, but that's what comes to mind for me.
That was our initial strategy for go-to-market. Unfortunately, the network that we had in place, which is primarily my partner's network, was somewhat sullied by the most recent project that we were a part of, because after we left, which the context, just to share a little bit more of that story, we were both let go within a few months of each other because we were finally licensed to sell our product after over 6 months of delays from the state of Massachusetts coming to perform the final inspection. So if you can imagine, we had a $3 million a month burn rate. We're totally operational. We have 80 employees. We're banging on all cylinders, and every week the state keeps telling us, yeah, we'll get there. We'll get there to do your inspection. And sort of like, okay, well, when? Our investors need to know, we need to know, we need to sell our product. And the answer just kept being, we'll get there. And as it turns out, it was just a lot of bad luck. The state was horribly under-resourced. They did not plan appropriately. COVID had gotten in the way, and they were just way behind. And they were not transparent with their constituents about how bad of a situation that they were in. So we ended up getting licensed in December of 2022, a license to sell. We were already licensed to operate. And then we had 3 months of runway to just absolutely nail our sales strategy and get into the market and be making great revenue. And we did not have great results after 3 months. So the board decided that they could no longer continue to, well, we were having trouble continuing to raise money at that point, even just for bridge funding. And so we were in a situation where we were both let go, and the end result of a lot of this is the new people that came in, they ended up kind of trying to make themselves look as good as possible by blaming my partner for everything that went wrong. And that kind of sullied his name within his network of investors. So we didn't get a lot of meetings, frankly, with those venture capital firms that might be interested in using this as a resource that could help in so many ways for their portfolio companies.
Well, I will be sure to introduce you to at least our venture firm and probably one other. I do have a question for you. Who's your competition? Would that be Carta?
I believe it's been a while since I looked into Carta. There are basically, our competition falls into a couple of categories. There are extremely basic, do-it-yourself, approaching free or cheap template-based options that are meant to really help the entrepreneur that is ready to help themselves. And there are extremely expensive, like to the tunes of tens of thousands of dollars, enterprise resource planning softwares that there are different niches, et cetera, but that's typically where you're going to get this level of kind of financial sophistication in reporting. And we're falling somewhere in the middle of both of those, which is we want people to be able to take what they are ready for. We don't want it to be like a one size fits all kind of, you have to implement this everywhere throughout your entire organization, and you need to get all of your directors on board, and you need to be super sophisticated and probably making, 10 plus million a year in revenue in order to be able to afford it. We want it to be able to be accessible to startups and to, you know, like at that really early stage where this makes a huge impact in the life cycle of the company, where they can make better financial decisions, where they can do, like if you use a tool like this, you can do scenario planning far more easily than you ever could have imagined. And you can actually say, well, what if we did it like this? Or what would it look like 3 years from now if we launched this product this way and then it takes this trajectory? Or what about this other trajectory? And you can plan around the worst case scenario and make that compelling instead of rely on the best case scenario and kind of blowing smoke to your investors and then being in a situation where you've got too short of a runway, or you know, you're just kind of behind the 8 ball. So we're trying to get, in terms of our competition, we're trying to meet people where they are instead of force a one size fits all solution, or be totally hands off and be like, well, here's some stuff, you figure it out.
Other questions?
Sure. Yeah, I just had an idea, Corey, about potential market niche for this, thinking about MBA programs that have student teams that build companies virtually, you know, as a case study or a project, that a toolbox like this would go a long ways to helping structure those business development exercises. Have you thought about or talked with any business departments about buying the product?
Currently, at the early stages of talking with a few university professors, but not, we haven't been able to pilot this anywhere. So, you know, if somebody knows a university business program or like a venture program or an accelerator program, even that may or may not be associated with the university, we're totally interested in piloting this out and just seeing how it can end up working for them.
So Stuart, I introduced him to a faculty member in the finance department at the University of Iowa yesterday, and there are a couple of other folks I'm thinking about plugging you into, Corey. Give me time. Wait till the semester starts.
You've been wonderful already, Alex. Thank you.
Go ahead.
Corey, we still miss your tea shop.
Yes.
And I am just so surprised to see you going from a relatively modest business enterprise to managing tens of millions of dollars. And it's like the last time I heard you had headed to Boulder to start up a sommelier business there, which was maybe a little bit more ambitious than your tea shop here. So how in the world did you make that jump? And also, how did you pick Mexico City, which is on the verge of completely running out of water?
Yeah, thankfully, the immediacy of our water crisis has been alleviated, and we've been getting consistent rains every afternoon, and some of that has been into the dam. So Mexico City is out of the immediate absolute crisis mode, but it's still a ongoing problem, and I'm worried about what it'll be like next year. But yeah, sometimes I also wonder how it is that I got here. The short answer is, well, first of all, I'm not the finance expert. I know how to talk about it enough. I know the strategic relevance of these tools, but I am not the person to go to for discussing how to manipulate each of these performance ratios for a business. That's my partner. But what led me here was really just somebody trusting. I always wanted to believe that business could be more like, I'll set up my shop and talk about what I do, and then I'll somehow attract a lot of strangers and I'll work with people based on my own merit. But in my experience, it's always been who I know. And this project of the cannabis startup, really, I started more modestly with a short-term consulting agreement for like a monthly retainer, and that led to a longer-term agreement, and that led to a full-time position. And it was just on the basis of, I guess, showing a lot of love for the problems and investment in the problems. And that's one thing that I'm good at in various contexts, is I'm good at falling in love with problems. And that's something that I also do. I have to plug this right now. So you can find me on Instagram with this other project that I'm launching at Farsight Society. And the other thing that I'm doing here, in addition to this more technical, more tools-based approach, is meeting people at the level of leadership skills and building a community around developing leadership skills that are resilient to obsolescence through AI. And one of the things that I'm witnessing is, my whole life I've been sort of on the outside to some extent for being a generalist, for not picking a specific industry niche and like niching down and just being really into my specific thing. And it's still such a common thing when you go meet people and you're networking, oh, what do you do? What basically people want to know what industry you're in, what box to put you in. But I've found myself, I guess, with my master's in organization design, really moving from industry to industry, and I have my own sort of specialization, if you will, in complexity management and in dealing with wicked problems, but that's not something that people can easily understand. So it just came down to trust. Like, I fell in love with problems, and that became noticed and infectious, and yeah.
Other questions? Other questions? Just a quick question. What other things are you doing to try to get your product to market? I mean, how are you trying to sell this? Where are you reaching? And how can this group help?
Yeah, right now, I think the short answer of anything that this group can do to introduce us, like I was just talking about, trust and networking. Like, for me, it's been really about the people that I know and the people that have confidence and have seen the quality of the work that I do. So if there's an introduction that you'd like to make and think, oh, well, I don't really know if this would work out or not, but I think so-and-so might be interested in using one of those tools, or I think so-and-so is doing something complementary, maybe you all could work on something together. Right now, we're very much at that experimental stage, relationship building stage. And I just have confidence that as we continue to be ourselves and lean into the fact that we're in this from a place of service. I mean, sure, we also want to make money, but there was we both worked for a year on this to develop this whole system without any pay, because we just felt it was important, so we're here because we want to be of help. And if there are opportunities where you think we can be of help, just introduce us, and we're going to find a way. We're going to find the right inroads. And we were doing like a very hard cold email marketing push. We had some great results in terms of open rate and click-through rate, but terrible conversion. And so again, I think a lot of this is like, the lesson I've learned is this sort of more holistic, more preventative approach to solving problems in business is just extremely countercultural and extremely not what people are used to and comfortable with. And it almost takes like an identity shift, like a behavioral change. Like, you have to kind of see yourself as somebody that tackles problems preventatively in order to even feel like this is not adding more overwhelm. And it's kind of a shame that that's just the state of entrepreneurship, but that's all we've ever known. So I guess it's not that much of a surprise that it's a hard sell.
Interesting. Any last questions for Corey? Corey, thank you.
It's my pleasure. Thank you all for being here and for your questions and insight. And Yeah, you can reach me at Corey@farsightsociety.com. You can find us on Instagram at Farsight Society. You can find me on LinkedIn. I'd love to hear from you, and I'd love to be able to be of service to anyone in your network. Right now, again, I'll stress pricing is like very flexible. So if you've got somebody that wants what we've got, they can probably afford us. Let's put it that way.
There you go. And if you need his contact information, contact me and I'll be glad to share it. Corey, I will be in touch, as you know, and I'm going to make a couple more introductions for you after seeing this presentation.